Roses are red, violets are blue, sugar is sweet. And today we're watching Return of the King. Hello everyone and welcome to Valentine's Day. It's Valentine. First off,
you could have rhymed that, you make my heart sing and we're watching Return of the King.
I mean, you did it just now. Hi bud. Happy Valentine's Day to you. And happy Valentine. You are my Valentine.
You're my Valentine.
And he's my second Valentine.
You're our second Valentine.
Second Valentine. So today is Valentine's Day. First off, happy Valentine's Day to all of y'all. We didn't get a chance to watch Return of the King yesterday.
Because we were watching Superb Owl.
We had to watch the Superb Owl. So we watched the Superb Owl. And now it's time for a movie. So we are going to start Return of the King. I have never seen this film ever. I do not know anything about this movie. I don't know anything about what happens at the end of The Lord of the Rings. So this is actually going to be genuinely, new to me. Although to be completely honest, Fellowship and Two Towers also felt genuinely new to me. And I'm really looking forward. I've actually been really looking forward to this now for 2 weeks. So
me too.
This is going to be great. We are, continuing to watch extended editions. At some point here in 30 minutes, we'll pause the movie and make a pizza. We also got some cinnamon rolls. We got plenty of snacks. We'll check back in approximately, I think, 12 hours when the movie is done, and then we'll talk about it. First things first, this is going to contain spoilers for Return of the King and then also Lord of the Rings as a whole. I'm sure you probably knew that.
It's been out for 20 years?
Oh my God, it's been out for 20 years. You hurt so many people with that statement.
I know, I hurt myself.
Lord of the Rings is an old movie. It's been out for 20 years. When I think of a movie that came out 20 years ago, I'm like, Terminator?
I was just going to say Terminator.
The Terminator came out 20 years ago. It's like, no, that's 40 years ago. So anyway, now that you've all been adequately damaged, let's talk about Return of the King. I'm going to try and do my best to recap it. And that's going to be exceptionally difficult because this was a long movie.
Yeah, it was very long.
A long movie.
Yeah.
Fellowship felt pretty long. Two Towers felt pretty long. Return of the King felt like multiple movies. It actually opened in a really interesting way.
Yes.
Because it opens by showing Smeagol when he was still normal.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really cool way to open the movie. I was like, that's really neat. That's a cool way of bringing a little more humanity to this character. Mm-hmm. Being like, look, this is a normal dude one time. And then he killed the guy. And I was like, whoa, that happened fast. But then, we immediately jump back to Frodo and Sam and Smeagol crawling around. And I gotta tell you, From my perception outside of this series, thinking about the series,
yeah,
before we started watching them a few weeks ago, I would think back, I'd be like, all right, Lord of the Rings, what is that about? I'd be like, well, that's about Frodo. And I'm not so sure. It's really not. There's very, the whole thing is about him, right? It's about, oh, he's the ring bearer, he's got to throw it in the volcano. Mm-hmm. But most of the movies are not about him, especially movies 2 and 3 when he finally splits up.
Yeah.
Barely any of the movie is about him, and most of his role, most of what Elijah Wood does throughout all these films is just go, Sam, and then fall on his face. That happens about 15 times. It's really the same thing over and over and over again, where it's oh, we haven't seen Frodo and Sam in a while. Then we cut back to them, and Frodo goes,
and he's looking more and more.
Yeah, he's like, it's so heavy, and Sam goes, come on, Mr. Frodo, have more of this bread. And then Frodo goes, Sam, and then hits face down in the dirt, and then Sam goes, no, Mr. Frodo, and then that happens 15 times. That's not the Lord of the Rings, real. I mean, there's so much other stuff going on that adds context and importance to that. But like that's basically all that happens to Frodo, and he seems so much more interesting and vital in Fellowship of the Ring because he's with everyone, and there's all of this like, oh my god, ooh, he's got the ring, and like he keeps like, oh, it's really heavy. But as soon as you break him apart from the rest of the group, that's his sole thing in life. It's like constantly we come back to him and it's like, what does Frodo do? And it's like, oh, well, he's burdened by the ring and Sam gives him the bread. So anyway, that's basically all that he does throughout the entire film. We don't get a whole lot of new characters this time.
No.
Which is good because Two Towers was a little overwhelming. Because like you have to know all these people immediately. I was surprised to see that Thulmon, King, not Bjorn's dad. Theoden. Who can remember these names? They're impossible. Theoden. I was surprised he had such a large role in this movie.
Yeah.
I really didn't expect that. I really suspected that it was just going to kind of be like he was in. I didn't expect him to be in Two Towers. I expected Bjorn's dad to be in Two Towers, but he was barely there. Turns out Bjorn's dad's crazy, but we'll get to that at some point. It's really hard to remember what order these events even happened in. One of the interesting things in this movie is that Tizzle and Wizzle get split up.
Yeah.
Oh, also interesting, they don't ride in a tree for the whole film because that was boring. That was a whole movie where they did nothing, and now they actually get to do stuff, which is good because like my hatred for them was, I think, well-founded. And it got to wane a little bit because they actually got to do some stuff.
Yeah.
I still never really liked them. And I thought about how there could be a cut of these movies where they aren't in it at all. And I'm pretty sure the movie would still work. I'm pretty sure there's nothing where they are like super, super vital to the story. You could cut them out completely and I think it'd be fine. Anyway, but like they get separated and then, the one, Tizzle steals the special...
He was pondering the orb.
He was the special marble. And then like, oh, that was bad, and then everyone's mad at Tizzle, rightfully so. And then there's a lot of Gandalf getting people out of jams, but that's kind of like what he does anyway.
That is what he does.
That's just kind of his job. There's a lot of like army building, which is kind of interesting because like Two Towers, the last third of Two Towers is just multiple fights.
Yeah.
Like happening at once. And in Return of the King, there's a lot of fight scenes as well, but it's largely populated to one specific fight scene happening at Minnesota. Sorry, I'm calling it Minnesota because I can't pronounce it. There's Minnesota, which is where most of the movie takes place in Minnesota. Across the street from Minnesota is Oligarchy. Oligarchy is the one it's where the ships come in. It's on the
city
sea.
On the river.
Yeah. And then across the way, which is a 3 days ride, is Rohan.
Rohan's back. Rohan's west.
Whatever. It's 3 days away. And there's like a whole sequence where like they haven't used the torches to talk to each other in like a bajillion years. And yet, conveniently, all of the people that need to be stationed at those places, and there's like 100 places, are there to light every torch. Thought that was a little weird, but sure, okay. Just in case one day the other city wants to be friends again, just in case, it would be best if we set up people in the mountains forever. Sure, okay, whatever. So Tizzle went to Minnesota and then pledged loyalty to the king, who's crazy.
Steward.
Well, he thinks he's the king.
Yeah.
I'll get to that in a minute. I might not. Wizzle went with Théodore's daughter, Théoladane.
Her name starts with an E.
I'm trying to think of the king's name. Theoden. Who can remember these names? It felt so long that it felt like multiple films. To the point where, as we were finishing, I was almost wondering what happened. I mean that. Genuinely, there's so much that happen, and it's an extended edition, too. There's so much that happens that I'm trying to think back, and I'm like, what even happened? There was just so much that occurred.
Basically, everything went after Minnesota. and they had to defend it.
Yeah.
And the steward was like, let me send my son into
The whole movie basically takes place there, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Like,
And
even
then-
at the beginning.
And then the riders of Rohan come down from the northwest. And then Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli.
Oh, yeah, they got to go into Death Passage.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then they get all them.
I thought that was
And
interesting.
then, because they go this way, and then they meet up around the mountains to Minnesota.
Yeah, I thought the Death Passage thing was really interesting because there's all these shots of like, you know, they're trying to get help from all these other kingdoms or whatever so they can do this fight. And like, there's not enough people. And then, you know, Aragorn talks to Elf High Priest. And Elf High Priest is like, okay, man, go into the Death Passage. And Aragorn's like, no. And Elf High Priest is like, but if you do, they get some people and they will follow you because you're the real king. And he's like, okay. So then he goes with Gimli and Legolas. And then they go in there and it's like scary because it's like death
And
stuff
ghosts.
and ghosts. And then they talk to the guy. And that scene is kind of weird. I didn't really understand the reasoning behind it because they get in there and all the ghosts come out and they're like, we'll kill you. And he's like, you can't kill me. I'm the real king. And he's like, now do what I say and I'll release you. And then all of the ghosts are like, nah. And then like 2 minutes later, they show up and they're like, oh, okay. And I'm like, well, why not just say okay? Was there like a quick meeting of the ghosts? Like once Aragorn and all them left, they're like, do you think we should do it? I don't know. Is he the real one? There's a lot of that. And that's a cool scene too, because after the ghosts agree, all of the ships pull up. And then the ships pull up. And they're like, we're bad. And Aragorn's like, guess what I got? Ghosts. And then the ghosts are like, we're ghosts. And that was neat. I'm paraphrasing it a little bit of what happened, but that's what happened.
But everyone meets in Minnesota and there's a battle.
Yeah.
And the girl's there.
Yeah. Oh, and like, there's a lot. So so Minnesota's already having a tough time keeping everything in check because there's like a lot of dudes. And then the folks from Rohan, all those folks like come down and they're doing the fight. And then the elephants show up again. There's folks that are like, they're bad because they listen to Sauron. But really, all of those dudes remind me of the folks from Mad Max. And I guess in this analogy, the elephants are the cars. So they fight for a little bit. And then eventually the dead come and they fight. And then like all this... It's weird because like the battle in Two Towers feels very dire in a way that the Return of the King battle does not. Return of the King battle, like there's moments of like, oh, this might be it. Because there's a moment where Tizzle and Gandalf are having a conversation about death. And I was like, oh, well, that's like, oh, you know, maybe they're going to die. Maybe there's something, maybe they go to like special Middle-earth heaven and there's scenes up there. You know, I didn't know. So I was wondering if maybe that was going to happen. But then the battle starts happening and like, I don't know, in Two Towers, it was like, oh crap, things are like, this may not work out. And in this one, it was like, no, we got it.
The dead came in, and that was it.
Yeah, once that happened, it was
over.
It was just over, and I was like, oh.
And then they go to the gate, and they're like, we need to be a distraction.
Oh, and there's also the part I never got around to talk about. The king is crazy. The king's crazy.
Steward.
Yeah, wannabe king is crazy. Bjorn's dad. Bjorn's dad's crazy. Gandalf knows he's crazy, hits him with the stick a few times, wants to burn his son alive, and then Tizzle's like, Jesus Christ, I gotta friggin' fix this. But he can't do it because he's Tizzle, so he had to go get Gandalf and be like, Gandalf, come fix this. There's a whole thing. Where were we?
They went and do a distraction at the gate.
What gate?
After the battle is done.
Oh.
Aragorn
Oh,
is
no,
like,
well, we gotta cut back, just like the movie, taking forever to cut back, we gotta cut back to Frodo and Sam, who, again, you know, Mr. Frodo, Sam falls face first. But one of the things that makes this different is that each time, you know, Smeagol is there, and Smeagol's like, I want the ring. And he's been, like, slowly implanting things into Frodo's head of, like, Sam wants to eat you, Mr. Frodo, or whatever. And eventually, you know, Smeagol does the distraction of, like, sets him up. He sets up Sam, and then Frodo's like, oh, I suddenly believe this guy for some reason. And then Sam's like, all right, I guess I'll go home. Which he can't, he'll die because it's too far and he doesn't have enough food. So Frodo and Smeagol go up, and then finally Smeagol plays his actual card, you know, and I actually, that was one thing I wasn't really sure where we were going with that, because I was like, I wasn't sure if it was going to turn out that, like, maybe Smeagol was like, there was a redemption arc there of like, oh my goodness, oh, now it's gonna, because there's that back and forth.
Yeah.
And there's that part in Two Towers where it feels like he snaps of like, no, I'm never gonna, you know, trust him. But that made me wonder. I was like, well, you know, maybe there's a chance. And no, that's not what happens at all, because Smeagol leads him to the arachnid, and then
She has a name.
Miss Spider.
It starts with an S. It's like
Spider. Spider-Man. So Spider-Man, you know, goes to eat him but can't, and then Sam takes the ring, which is a little sly move that isn't revealed until later, and it's super clever. And then Sam actually, you know, assumes that Frodo is dead, because that's why he takes the ring in the first place. So then it's like, oh wait, Frodo's alive, because the orcs are like, he's alive. Then they take him to the tower, and then Sam follows him up the tower. So there's this whole thing. Oh, and at some point, there's a tiny fight, and Smeagol gets knocked down a precipice, and you know he can't be dead, because there's not enough drama surrounding it. So I knew he was coming back. It's like there's no way that this creature from 3 movies gets knocked into a pit and that's it. And I'm like, okay, he'll be back at some point. But it's a long time till he's back. Eventually, Sam and Frodo get reunited. They have the ring. They're on their way into the volcano. And I'm like, holy crap, we're finally here. It's felt like forever, and it's probably because it's been like 14 hours of viewing, but we finally made it this far. Then you finally get in there, and then that's where Smeagol shows back. And I was like,
he shows up like right outside. And they have that little fight outside.
Yeah.
And then they get inside and he comes back.
Yeah. So then they're outside, and there's the whole thing about like you said, creating the diversion. So the Eye of Sauron. By the way, Eye of Sauron, weird thing. Like, I understand how it worked, like from Fellowship on. Like, I understand that, like, oh, it can literally see. But they turn in Return of the King, they turn it into a spotlight. There's a part that honestly it felt like you're playing Splinter Cell, where it's like the eye is like looking very, and it's projecting a beam. And it's just really funny to me, because it's like, oh, Mr. Frodo, get behind the rock. You know, press circle to crouch, Mr. Frodo, because here comes Eye of Sauron. This is really bizarre. Anyway, so they finally get in there, and then of course, one last time, Frodo's like, actually, maybe I'll keep the ring for myself because it looks really good on my hand. And then, you know, Gollum comes out and it's like, now I can get it. What really, really wild is that Gollum bites his finger off. And as soon as he did that, for the rest of the film, I was like, show Elijah Wood's left hand. And they didn't. So, like, there was a lot of like planning and production and everything that, you know, someone was checking. There's a script supervisor who's like, no, we can't set up the shot that way. We have to make sure we can never show Elijah Wood's left hand ever again. But of course, that is the most fitting way to kill off Smeagol, was to have him fall into the volcano with the ring. And I assumed that that's how it was going to happen for a while if they didn't do a redemption arc thing. Mm-hmm. I wasn't sure what they were going to do with Frodo. I assumed that the happiest ending would be that he lives, but I wasn't sure. There was a part of me for a moment there when they're all standing up in the volcano. I was like, what if Sam just like bum rushes the both of them and all 3 of them just go tumbling down and then that's it? And I was like, well, they can't really end that way because like there's nothing to end with. And I was like, okay, I guess something else is going to happen. Sam survives. Frodo survives. They live several hours on a volcanic rock until Gandalf
shows up with the eagles.
Again, Gandalf coming in to like fix everything. Not too much, because that's the wizard's code. I've had a few people tell me in comments, and also Chaz told me, because Chaz is big into the Lord of the Rings, and the way he explained it was, he said Gandalf is an angel. He's like, just think of it that way. If you think that Gandalf's an angel, there's like certain powers that he has, but he can't interfere too much. And that perspective helped a little bit. But also, you know, wizard's code. So anyway, all of that happens, and basically the day is saved. They throw the ring in the thing. The tower comes on down, and then all the orcs just leave.
Remember the ground falls in?
The ground conveniently falls in around everyone that's bad, and not a single person. I'm like, that's not how these sinkholes work, man. The sinkhole. When a sinkhole happens, a sinkhole doesn't look into your heart. That's not the way sinkholes work. Anyway, and then we enter into the epilogue of the film, basically, where, you know, everything is good. All of the Fellowship of the Ring is there. Frodo and Sam, they're fine. Bjorn's still dead. But everyone's good, has a little party. And
Coronation.
And then, Aragorn becomes the king for real. And then the girl elf, she has
Arwen,
she shows up again. I didn't really talk much about her, but she's there. So she comes in, and then they presumably have a kid because she envisioned a kid at some point in the film. And then they all bow before the halflings. And then of course, the actual finale. Frodo finishes the book that Bilbo was working on.
Mm-hmm. They've gone back to the Shire.
Sam gets married. Mm-hmm. And then there's a little send-off where they're all going to see Gandalf away. And Bilbo, because they're going on this ship. And everyone's crying except Frodo. And I was thinking, Frodo's going with them. And then, sure enough, Gandalf's like, Frodo's going with us. Then everyone cries because Frodo is going away. And then they go somewhere.
West.
Fun fact, earlier today, in fact, I was looking at some Lord of the Rings stuff online because I was just a little curious, and I was reading a little bit on this wiki about it. And my understanding, which is a low-level understanding of like a small amount of Googling, is that in the world, on the west, like the west continent, is this continent that in it exists like higher level creatures, because there's these creatures, I'm remembering from what I Googled today, Valar, that like made the world or something, and like they live there. I don't know. That's as far as I got. But reading that today, which was just happenstance, was enough to be like, oh, okay, well maybe that makes a little sense. If they're going to the west where like smart things are, then that, you know, that's where a wizard and a ring bearer would go.
Yeah.
Kind of makes sense. Anyway, that's it. Now, did I like it? Yeah. I mean, so the thing is, this movie is extremely good. This series was extremely good. And saying that it's, you know, a cinematic masterpiece, like, doesn't really do it justice at all. It's a really, really quality piece of cinema. Having watched the entire thing, I think I'm going to put an asterisk next to my recommendation of extended edition and say I would watch the extended edition if you have someone with you to explain stuff. Like, having Mal around to explain stuff made it, I would say, mostly worthwhile. I think you should have someone to explain it no matter what, if you can. But if you can't, maybe watch the theatrical edition. Like, there's definitely pacing issues that I firmly believe would not exist in the theatrical version of the films. And those are probably solved if you don't watch the extended editions.
Yeah.
But overall, comparing like the extended editions of Lord of the Rings to like extended editions of some random movie, this is a more worthwhile investment of your time. You know, if you like the lore side of it, but you do kind of have to have someone to explain it, because the stuff that they're inserting sometimes has no context.
Yeah.
There's a lot of moments in these movies where they just reference something, and there's never been talk of it before, and there will never be talk of it again.
And I'm pulling from 16 years back.
Well,
that's the last time I read the book.
You know, so that's the sort of stuff that you get. So if you're just looking to experience the films, I think if you just want to watch the movies, I think you could watch the theatrical versions and you would understand what's going on, but like there is a lot more there to get, and you almost need like a wiki pulled up while you're watching for some of it. It's not, I'm overselling that aspect of it just a little bit, but there's definitely moments where having someone around to explain it does help.
Yeah.
How'd you love the movies? Because this is the first time you've seen the extended films.
Yeah, I think I saw Fellowship extended.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember. It's been
A while.
slightly less than 20 years.
Yeah.
And it was nice. It was good. I was like, oh, I know what happens, and I was excited for you to see. And because I know how you are with films, I was like, I wonder if he's trying to analyze what's going to happen in the plot. And then when you sat here and you told me about what you were trying to think about, like, oh, it's going to end this way. Like, that was exactly what I thought you'd be thinking.
I mean, well, and this is a little hard too, because like with Lord of the Rings, like it's a book.
Yeah.
And sometimes, when they're making movie adaptations of books, they try and very, very strictly follow the book, and sometimes they change things for an adaptation. And that means it's really, really hard to follow for something like this of like, what are they going to do? Are they going to do something that's a little more obvious for moviegoers, or is it going to be something that's like, oh, this is out of left field? Why did they do this? And for the most part, if there were changes made, and I don't know about the changes because I didn't read the books, it felt more akin to what I would expect from a movie.
Yeah.
So, it's not that it was easy to see anything coming, I guess, necessarily, but there wasn't anything that, like, surprised me in a big, big way. I did kind of expect Frodo to die.
Yeah.
Kind of surprised he didn't die, but anyway. Are you snoring?
He is snoring.
Are you snoring? We're trying to do a video. Huh?
Now he's purring.
Now he's purring. We scratched your face up. You had an itch and you itched it too hard. Silly boy. Anyway, all right. It's late because
It's super late.
that movie took forever. Happy Valentine's Day.
Thanks. Happy Valentine's Day.
I had a good one, and I thoroughly enjoyed this series. At some point in the future, I don't know when, maybe I'll get a chance to watch it again and watch the theatrical versions, and just to see what the difference is. I'm sure that some of the pacing issues would be remedied a little bit, but yeah, they're great films. They really, really are. And thank you again to Luna Pearl, who sent us the Blu-rays. It was really cool to watch them. I think the only thing that's unfortunate is that I'm actually genuinely interested in the production process of this film because it's such a huge undertaking. And these Blu-rays actually only contain the films. And I thought for sure that they had like the special features on them. And I think it's because the data is so huge, because these movies are so huge that there is no extra space left on the disc. So there actually is no special features, but I believe that there's probably something on like YouTube or something like that. So I plan on actually looking into that and watching some of that, because I just think it'd be really fascinating.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
Because like these movies took forever to make, like forever. So it'd be cool to look into that and learn a little bit more about them. Okay, I am tired.
We gotta get to bed.
We gotta get up for breakfast stream. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for watching. And as always, let's meet back tomorrow, shall we?